Miller, you have prominent Democratic opinion makers, spokespeople who are praising Mao. Hannity, dressing as Mao. Stephen Miller.
They have 35 DSA candidates running this midterm. 35.
Yes, and all the recent primaries that have been contested in the Democratic Party have been won by socialists and communists. And to your point, minus Fetterman, not a single leader in the Democrat Party has been willing to condemn the Democrat Socialists of America, again, who represent an ideology.
To give, first of all, that's not true. There's hella people who are doing that, okay? But then again, to give credit to like maybe Elisa Slotkin, who has in the past done that, like at least some of the more serious Democrats understand that this is just, this is a bullshit smear campaign that they should not engage in, with the exception of like Josh Gottheimer and stuff like that. Never cede on oppositional framing. It doesn't matter if you're a Democrat who hates my guts. Do not do that. Okay? Do not do that. Even if you agree with them, keep that shit to your damn self. If you want to keep your seat, if you want to keep being a Democrat, you know, I'm an outsider. Oh, you can say that all day. It doesn't fucking matter. First of all, I voted for Hillary Rodham Clinton. I voted for Joe Biden. I don't give a shit. Okay? Having said that, okay, the idea that you would listen to this bald Nazi and go, he's cooking on this one. I never agree with him, but he's cooking on this one. You're a piece of shit. Okay? And in the eyes of the voters, you are far less a Democrat than even someone like myself is. Okay? You can run around and say, oh, Hasan's not a real Democrat all day, every day. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. When you agree with a Nazi like Stephen Miller, you're de facto a Nazi. Okay? That's it.
That in the last century killed tens of millions of people. You have prominent Democratic opinion makers, spokespeople who are praising Mao. These are people
dressing as Mao. You don't have that suit at home?
I don't. Very popular in the Democratic Party.
You suck my dick, you bald Nazi freak. Look at this testicular looking over here. Oh my Lord. Oh my Lord. I wish we didn't have to also fight people who are supposed to be ostensibly on our side, you know? But they're not. Nothing could have prepared me for what he's actually trying to say. What is he saying? What is Trump saying now?
You watch companies move production from America down to Mexico. Mexico. I love the way there's a very nice president of Mexico. You know that. She's very nice, and she speaks beautifully, and she calls it Mexico.
Mexico. So stupid. Bro, this guy's the president, dude. It's so funny that his followers are like, oh my God, this Twitch streamer wore a Mao suit. What the fuck are you talking about? This is the goddamn president, man. Democrats are so lost in the goddamn sauce, dude. Democrats who also lean into the exact same shit that Fox News is doing to be like, oh, the socialist menace, the socialist menace. Talk about dropping the ball. Like, this guy is our president currently, and he's ruining everything. And you're over here being like, you know, the real problem is democratic socialism. Miller is okay with killing his fellow citizens, and this hypocrite wants to bring up Mao. Are you for fucking real? Yeah. To be honest, Kamala did call Trump a communist. It didn't work, though. Yeah, I know. I don't even want to fuck. Anyway, Matt Iglesias went on Pod Save America to encourage Democrats to moderate more. The listeners aren't buying it. These are the top comments. Wow. It just took two different sentences to say there's nothing Hakeem Jeffries could be doing, or Chuck Schumer. Inspiring. They can stop attacking student protesters. They can stop trying to block any people running against incumbents. It's a very long list of what they could be doing. That's not just voting in the Senate. Moderating, standing for basically no movement is exactly how the Democratic Party got in this mess. We want to see strong voices take a stand and fight for things previously thought impossible. Look at the labor union fight or civil rights. They fought for the extremes and won concessions. Moderating simply means you slow the other party's concessions. If Dems want to keep pushing moderate centrists that voters don't want, they will never win again. Current centrists are bought and sold. They don't care about anyone but their donors and themselves. We need progressives. Either you want policies that make life better for everyone, or a group of corrupt, racist, anti-LGBTQ plus, oligarchic fascists that throw black and brown people into concentration camps and kill innocent people in the streets. You either have a moral compass or you don't. Choose wisely. Is this episode title supposed to be satire? Center left? You mean what you used to be called Republican? Because no thanks. Yeah, Matt Iglesias will look at these comments and sincerely say, this is the problem with the Democratic Party. The base has become too woke. Not realizing that, like, you know, if the Democrats leaned into that base and the real organic enthusiasm and maybe even accomplished some of the fucking agenda items for the base, we would probably be able to, you know, defeat Republicans permanently. Okay. I say we in that regard, even though, you know, I don't always consider myself to be a Democrat, even though I've never voted for a Republican, and I never will. The reason why I say we in that situation is because I do, unlike Matt Iglesias, recognize the dangers of Trumpism, recognize the dangers of reactionary MAGA policies, okay? I want to make sure that we de facto run a one-party state where nobody ever wants to vote for a Republican ever again. That's my goal. I know some people will say, well, wait a minute, what is that? What are you, a Marxist-Leninist? And my goal is to make sure nobody ever even entertains voting for a Republican ever again. Okay? It's great to have some backbone. I don't understand why centrists constantly are trying to moderate to the center. Oh boy, Fox News going to like that one? Okay, whatever. Post it. Post the W. Numbers on the board. Nate Silver. It's kind of striking how, apart from Iran, most of the Trump-related stories this summer have been boring and dumb. Reflection pool, White House Correspondents' Dinner, or kind of funny, FIFA. Maybe we're moving on from him being the central figure in American politics. This isn't true. You're just rich. Cooked. ISIS killed some people. Indeed. But there's been more focus both from the mainstream media and even more specifically the partisan leading media on these low-stakes, frankly kind of stupid stories instead. Maybe because they click better. Because it feels lame duckish. Not Trump is an existential threat. I don't know why these guys have no shame. I guess in order to in order to get to the positions of power within the ranks of the centrist commentariat, you have to be a shameless guy who's wrong all the time. But I will say it is rather odd how much these guys openly reveal their disdain for the working class, how much they openly reveal how out of touch they are with regular frequency when their job kind of relies on them being in touch, right? Like that's what they're positioning themselves as. Guy who looks at the polls and understands what the needs of the masses are. And it's very strange. It is very strange how actively and openly they reveal how out of touch they are. Left-wing candidates are in a popular sweet spot with cutting aid to Israel. Always good to be the spend money here, not their candidate, especially when it's being spent there to blow up hospitals. Conversation changes when the ask is blocking arms sales. You're not saving money that can be spent here on schools and bridges, etc. You're making a moral case for that country to not be able to buy weapons from U.S. manufacturers. Yeah, we already do that. Do we supply weapons to North Korea? Do we supply weapons to Iran? Not anymore, we don't. We used to. What is this? She wiped the floor with his raggedy ass on the radio last week. Now he's scared. Oh my God, a second pullout from the debate. Update, our team received a call this morning from Wesley Bell's team regretfully canceling his attendance this evening. Oh my God. The play is always the same, dude. They have unlimited Israel dollars, so they don't feel the need to actually give the voters a debate. AIPAC candidates pulling out of any kind of contest. Piker challenges Hannity to book him for appearance. Streamer Hasan Piker has challenged Fox News host Sean Hannity to have him on for a debate. It's true facts. Here, post this clip to Sean. Why won't Sean Hannity have me on to discuss this? He said he was supposed to, and instead, he chose not to have me on and talk about me instead, Piker said during a recent stream. It's very interesting. What are you afraid of, Sean? We can discourse back and forth on this issue. Whatever issue you want to talk about. The left-wing media personnel's challenge came days after Sean Hannity attacked Piker during an episode of his show, criticizing me for praising former chair of the Chinese Communist Party, Mao Zedong. This is what radical democratic socialists want to bring to America, Hannity warned his audience. They don't love this country, the Fox News host continued. Referring to Piker as one of the Democrats' core leaders, Piker is a former pundit with the left-wing media outlet, the Young Turks, who has grown a significant following among liberals with streams during which he discusses party politics and hot-button political issues. He's an outspoken critic of Israel, President Trump, and much of the agenda of the political right. Hell yeah. Hopefully this will apply some pressure. Didn't he invite you first? Yeah, he did. He did. The Cato Institute wrote a piece about you. Libertarians use Hasan Piker's praise of Mao Zedong to educate the youth about socialism. Yeah, it's sad because, the Cato Institute are reliable allies when it comes to the barrage of anti-migrant, reactionary white nativists, anti-immigrant talking points. Sad to see the homies. Why the right is freaking out about third worldism. Conservatives are ginning up a familiar panic about subversive leftists, but also getting at something real. I love when libtards over at Vox will be like, you know, as a liberal media outlet that routinely rails against Donald Trump, we have to also admit that the fascist apparatus of the state that is actively targeting the dissident left, the radical left, is kind of correct. It's awesome. It's awesome. By the way, this attitude that demands that American militarism cease, that America restrain itself on the global stage a little bit, is a perfectly valid, perfectly reasonable demand. I'm not alone in this demand. As a matter of fact, it's a very popular demand. It's one that Trump tapped into when he lied about being an isolationist, when he lied about being the peace president. Okay? The anti-third worldist right is mostly Fuentes, by the way, not even standard MAGA shit. Yeah, it's unbelievably racist, for the record. The whole, like, third worldism is a real problem is incredibly racist. Most people's attitude, most liberals' attitude on this is maybe we should stop killing people in developing nations, in the periphery. Okay? That's it. Third worldism as a camp is not a real block of power in the world currently. It doesn't exist because there's Cold War is over. There is no USSR bloc. There is maybe one hegemonic America and its allies, the Western nations. But there is no real, non-aligned movement. There's no real third world. It doesn't exist. We use it colloquially. So there isn't really a lot of appetite, even amongst liberals, for this kind of commentary. But to then openly align yourself with Secretary of State Marco Rubio's ridiculous attempts at silencing political dissent in the country by tying it back to foreign adversaries that they are inventing is, one, leaning into incredible amounts of white supremacist thought. And it's also setting up your own downfall, Zach Beauchamp. They are not going to make a distinction between liberal NATO Atlanticists who still criticize Donald Trump and anti-NATO radical third worldists like myself. You're a moron. Under no circumstances should you give credibility to this State Department unless you're, choosing which side you're going to be on, unless you're saying, I'm going to be a fascist. In a report on Cuba, the State Department has argued that Havana has become the beating heart of the new and distinct kind of Marxism, which the State Department calls third worldism. Cuba is spreading this doctrine, per Secretary of State Marco Rubio, with the explicit intent of fomenting revolution in America. Here, the Trump administration is following conservative influencers who in recent months have become increasingly preoccupied by the third worldist threat. The left is moving from woke to third worldism, Chris Rufo, perhaps the right's leading activist, recently wrote. Manhattan Institute think tank Christopher Rufo, who is responsible for the CRT, anti-woke, anti-DEI initiatives, is now cooking up another one. Chris Rufo also, obviously, has to be incredibly pro-Israel. So that's part of the reason why they're doing this third worldism thing, to tie it back to anti-Israel sentiment. Where is this article? Okay, so Ben Shapiro, one of the conservatism's leading media voices, declared in April that the future of the Democratic Party is radical third worldism. Rehan Salam, the president of the influential Manhattan Institute, a former woke turned anti-woke for money, has warned that third worldism, left unchecked, won't remain on the radical fringe, citing New York Mayor Zohran Mamdani as the chief example of a third worldist in power. Every one of these, every one of these Manhattan Institute guys are just mercenaries. That's it. All of this may be news to Mamdani and other Democrats who virtually never use the term to describe their own views. So what are Rubio, Rufo, and Shapiro talking about? And is there any truth in the various claims about rising third worldist influence? The answer is more complicated than it might seem. Conservatives are using third worldist a lot like terms such as woke and critical race theory before it, as an ill-defined concept that serves as a clearinghouse for various right-wing grievances and can be used as a slur to discredit and demonize the left. Yet at the same time, they've actually put their fingers on something real. Oh, Among a very specific and visible subsection of the socialist left, a set of views that can be reasonably termed third worlders are rising in prominence. For a progressive outside this camp, deciding what comes next will require engaging with a right-wing critique directly and not dismissing it as a smear. Also, we have to hand it to them. We have to hand it to them. Once again, these idiots think that there is a factional battle that you can fight within the left flank, in the left opposition to Donald Trump, by leaning in to the ridiculous propaganda from the fascist Trump administration. You will also be at the camps alongside me, okay? You need to understand that, and you need to understand that now. You idiot. You dumb baboon. You are also going to be thrown in the same camps that we get thrown into. You're so stupid, unless you become a loyal servant of the fascist Republican Party. Then he talks about the third worldism, blah, 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 even though it's irrelevant. And I suspect he will then turn this into how the Trump administration and his allies are basically arguing that people like Sankara are trying to trick you. Whatever the modern left's protestations, their actual views are basically still pretty similar to those of the Cold War American radicals who apologize for the Khmer Rouge. Only in this case, the most admired third world militants are now jihadists rather than the communists. Oh, so you are just as racist as them. Never mind. Yeah, that's it. Where the left is becoming jihadists. This is the same exact propaganda from Nick Fuentes all the way to Marco Rubio. He just happens to agree with it. That's it. That's it. He happens to agree with it because he's pro-Israel, for the record. This is Vox, by the way. In this viewpoint, yeah, the most influential work in this vein comes from Zineb Rabua, a fellow conservative Hudson Institute think tank. She sees third worldism as a joint product of anti-American governments, including Cuba, leftist intellectuals, and American universities. Its recent prominence, in her view, is a function of October 7th of the Gaza War, which allowed third worldist logic to fuse seamlessly with a decolonial language that became popular during the woke era. In this viewpoint, a terrorist organization like Hamas comes to be seen as an armed expression of a national liberation struggle. Because it is that. It is that. That's what it is. The question ceases to be what Hamas actually did and becomes what Israel's presumed to represent. And because Israel's position as the forward post of American imperial power, defending Hamas becomes almost automatically a moral gesture directed towards the United States itself. But Rabua does not stop with foreign policy. In her view, third worldism has become a kind of universal ideology that's applied to everything. Oh my God, from university hiring, the border policy, to all of the different things that the conservative movement hates. The ideology asks a country to accept that its power is a historical accident awaiting either correction with a sort of new red terror or annihilation. Oh my Lord. Mamdani wants to plunder New York like the Somalis plundered Minnesota, Rufo writes. Legal or illegal, it's all piracy, looting, and expropriation, pure third worldism. By the time we get to Zoran Mamdani's a pirate, it's clear that the analytic train has gone off the rails. Oh, so there's a reasonable critique here. There's a reasonable critique. Mamdani doesn't fit the bill. That's what it is. But there is a reasonable critique. I'm sure it's going to get to me eventually, this article. Oh my God, he wrote so much. Ay, ay, ay. The most obvious example is Hasan Piker. There it is. The streamer and provocateur who has become a lightning rod in debates over the Democratic Party's direction. Piker has repeatedly expressed admiration for the Chinese Communist Party despite his vicious authoritarian tendencies and said he would vote for Hamas 1,000 times over Israel. My colleague Eric Levitz described his worldview as campus, an old leftist term for someone who aligns themselves with any government that opposes the American-led bloc. And one that I think is a bit more precise than third worldist. But Piker's fascination with anti-American militancy and terrorists. He once gave a fawning interview to a Houthi fighter on stream. Not true. He wasn't a Houthi fighter. Suggests that third world is at least a reasonable descriptor. And then he goes after Neville Roy Singham, ties me back to him. And then also Daria Liza Avila Chevalier. Once again, it's literally just, we got to hand it to the State Department. Some of these dirty, filthy, commie third worldists do need to get packed up. Writing this at Vox.com. That's it. That's the whole article. Okay? The entire article is, we got to hand it to the Trump administration, which I'm very critical of, except on this issue. Some of these filthy, Muslim, dirty Islamo-communists need to go to prison. That's what this article is. Okay? You have to turn around and make it seem like there's some reasonable critique, but only we get to allow what the boundaries of that reasonable critique are, okay? This is slapping a liberal patina on reactionary Trumpism. That's all this is. Luckily for us, nobody feeds Vox.com except for us. Dumbass. Idiots, dude. We got to hand it to the Hudson Institute. We got to hand it to the Manhattan Institute. These unbelievably reactionary think tanks, because at the end of the day, they're also pro-Israel, and so are we. Okay? And these guys are really the bag for us to maintain our appeal in polite society as people who are pro-Israel but too ashamed to openly pop off about how Israel has every right to do whatever it's done. Yeah, like I said, luckily for us, nobody gives a shit about what Zach Beauchamp has to say. Dumbass. Yeah, here's another example of this. Moderate Democrats turn into Nick Fuentes and start complaining about Arabs turning the U.S. into the third world when there's a progressive pro, Medicare for all, anti-war Muslim candidate running for a Senate seat. Insane, dude. These monsters.